Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're going to totally strip away the boring math, the dense equations, and the confusing jargon of traditional economics. Instead, we're going to reveal the fascinating, raw incentives that are actually governing our daily lives. We're pulling all of this from Charles Wheelan's incredible, eye-opening book, Naked Economics.
Right off the bat, let's just toss out the complex calculus and those confusing graphs you might remember from high school or college. Seriously, forget them, because this explainer focuses purely on the engaging reality of everyday logic. Traditional economics tends to get completely bogged down in numbers, but naked economics, it focuses on raw stories and simple human incentives.
We've got a fantastic roadmap for today. We'll hit economics without the math, dive into uncomfortable economic truths, look at hedging your morning coffee, explore the power of specialization, and wrap up with free trade and cold beer. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Economics Without the Math. You know, the reviewer from our source material is actually an economics major himself, and he points out something pretty crucial. He says the author wants to stay away from the math and all the boring things you might have seen in econ class, and he does an amazing job at it. Think about that. Even after taking dozens of college credits, this approach gave our reviewer totally fresh insights he'd completely missed before. By dodging the complex numbers, we literally get a clear window into the raw mechanics of how the real world actually ticks. Which brings us to Section 2, Uncomfortable Economic Truths. Here's the thing. Economic incentives, they really don't care about our feelings. When you strip away the emotion, you're left with some pretty harsh realities. For instance, from a strictly financial standpoint, smokers can actually provide an economic benefit to the state. Crazy, right? But it's because they might pass away sooner and leave their Social Security funds in the system for everyone else. Or consider well-intentioned policies like mandating extra maternity leave. Economically speaking, this can inadvertently cause employers to discriminate against hiring women simply because the policy makes them more expensive to employ. And honestly, this is exactly why understanding the naked truth of economics is absolutely vital. It forces us to look at the raw reality of incentives, totally bypassing our social comfort zones. It reveals the actual cold, hard outcomes of our policies, not just the feel-good outcomes we originally intended. Moving right along to Section 3, Hedging Your Morning Coffee. So ask yourself this, how does a massive company like Starbucks guarantee your daily coffee stays affordable, even when global climate changes or sudden supply shortages hit? Coffee's a raw commodity, right? It's completely dependent on the weather. So why doesn't your $3 cup suddenly spike to $7 when there's a global shortage? Well, the secret sauce is in the financial markets, specifically a neat little tool called options. An option is basically a financial security that gives a buyer the right to purchase a specific asset, like, say, tons of coffee beans, at a predetermined specific price. You can think of it literally like an insurance policy for your morning brew. Just imagine a world without these options. A climate shock hits, causes a massive coffee shortage, prices absolutely skyrocket, and bam, your daily $3 coffee is now $7. But contrast that with our actual reality. Starbucks literally has an entire department dedicated solely to trading these securities. They lock in the price of coffee way ahead of time. So even if disaster completely wrecks the global supply, your daily habit is financially protected at $3. They're basically using financial markets to ensure their entire supply chain. Let's shift gears to Section 4, the power of specialization. So there's this famous story about Abraham Lincoln needing steel for the railroads, and his rationale for buying American steel instead of British steel went a little something like this. Why am I going to go and buy steel from Britain when I'm going to get the steel and they're going to get the money? If someone makes the steel here, we're going to keep the money and the steel. Now, on the surface, Lincoln's logic sounds incredibly reasonable, highly protective, and, well, super patriotic, right? But wait, to really understand why Lincoln's logic is actually fundamentally flawed from an economic standpoint, let's apply that exact same thinking to a simple trip to the supermarket. Imagine trying to get dinner without the concept of specialization. Step 1, buy a cow. Step 2, raise it for a few years. Step 3, slaughter it yourself. And finally, Step 4, eat the meat. I mean, it sounds completely ridiculous, doesn't it? And that brings us to the crucial point here. Specialization. The massive amount of time you'd waste raising that cow is time you could have spent doing something far more productive. If we try to hoard all the money and all the goods by doing absolutely everything ourselves, whether a single person or entire nation, we end up wasting incredibly valuable time. That time should be poured into whatever it is we're actually best at. Guys, that right there is the true engine of productivity. which perfectly tees up our final segment, Section 5, Free Trade and Cold Beer. Thanks to globalization and free trade, which is just that same specialization we just talked about but on a macro level, the U.S. seamlessly exchanges goods with its international partners. In fact, Mexico sits right near the top as our third biggest trading partner. And this massive global exchange brings us directly to a fun little taste test from our source material, trying a Chihuahua Mexican beer. The host of our source video actually reviews this imported beer, and he notes it has a really soft flavor profile. There are no extra hidden ingredients, it's just simple and light. Basically, it's the perfect ice-cold companion for a lazy day at the beach. And this perfectly illustrates our payoff today. The reviewer gives it a solid 3.8 out of 5. It's a simple, refreshing, imported beer that is super easy to get in the US, and it's made possible entirely by those very same global trade networks and specialization concepts we just demystified. Stepping back to the source material itself for a second, the reviewer points out that Naked Economics is really an absolute must-read. Whether you're trying to decode complex political debates or just want to understand how global markets actually function on a daily basis, this book absolutely delivers. And honestly, the best part? It costs less than $15. The book earns an incredibly impressive 4.6 out of 5 from our reviewer. And remember, this is coming from someone with a degree in economics. It still offered him totally fresh, fascinating insights. It proves once and for all that economics definitely doesn't have to be bogged down in boring, dense math to be profoundly educational. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this one thought. Now that you've seen the naked truth, what hidden economic incentives are secretly driving the choices you're going to make tomorrow? Take a look around you today and ask yourself, what invisible forces are really driving the everyday transactions in your own life? Thanks so much for joining me. Keep questioning the world around you, and I'll catch you next time.